Okay, on today's episode of the Service to CEO podcast, we have Genelle. She is an Army veteran, and we kind of know each other digitally. Our first time meeting somewhat face to face, and she designed the amazing logo and cover for the podcast. So I'm excited to finally have you on, and let's get started.
Let's do
Um,
this.
would you like, would you like to take a second, just give us a little bit of background, where you're from, why you joined, all that fun stuff?
Sure. I'm from Kansas originally. My husband is still active duty, so I'm still living that PCS life. We just recently, like very recently, moved to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And it's totally different out here. But I was very fortunate. Right before here, I was living in Kansas. I was like 15 years removed. So it was nice and a little refreshing to be back. But I was ready for the next PCS to come too. Unfortunately, I was only in the Army for 12 years before I had to medically retire. So that wasn't, at the time, it was not an ideal situation of getting out of the military. But looking back, I'm really glad that the sequence of events happened the way that they had happened. And I can go into more detail if you want to ask any of that stuff. I'm pretty much an open book, but I also know that most people probably don't care. So um, let's see. I joined the Army. This is not your typical joining the Army story. I'm curious if any of the guys that I'm going to mention in this are going to ever see this, or if they even know that they took part of it. I was in college and there was a beer pong tournament that I was supposed to be at, but I was working at Lowe's while I was in college. And this kid, David, worked at Lowe's with me, and his uncle was a recruiter. This was like back in 2006. So back then the recruiters didn't really want to be recruiters. Usually it was like the next up of their duty assignments. This guy did not really want to be a recruiter. It was his uncle. And David asked me as a favor to his uncle, can you just go into the recruiting office and just make it look like you're halfway interested? I was like, sure, dude, I've got time before this beer pong tournament. So I went, but I'm also kind of a people person. I've always been. And I talked to this guy. We talked very little about the military. I don't even remember his name. I know he was a sergeant first class, but anyways, we started talking forever. Again, never even talked about joining the military. He knew I was in there as a favor to get his commander off of his ass. So I showed up to the beer pong tournament late, and my friend Cole, who was my beer pong partner, was like, dude, where were you? Like, we were supposed to play last round. And I don't know, beer pong was such a big deal back in 2006. And
Yeah,
I told him where
in
I was, and he
college.
was like, why were you at the recruiting office? Like that, you couldn't join the Army even if you wanted to. And I was like, yes, I could. So that was like, actually, today's October 30th. That was around this exact same time back in 2006. I went back,
Wow.
took the ASVAB on the 31st on Halloween. I was also like this very academically gifted kid back then. I was very intelligent back then. So I aced this ASVAB. Like I got stupid high scores. And then my recruiter was actually very interested, like, hey, we really could use someone like you. But I had in the back of my mind is this freaking guy, Cole, told me I couldn't join the Army even if I wanted to. So out of spite, I went back in. I was like, no, we're doing this. I'm pretty sure I went in there the first time on the 28th. I took the ASVAB on the 31st. November 3rd, I swore in. And by November 8th, I shipped off to basic training. And it wasn't until like a
Oh
week
my
later that I
God.
was like, what have I done? But it ended up being an amazing decision. But it was definitely
Yeah,
not a well thought out plan.
that is crazy. You took challenge accepted to a whole new level.
Yeah, but it was really stupid because I had a full ride scholarship back then that I obviously had to throw away to join the Army because you can't just not come to class and still have a full ride scholarship. But it was fine
Yeah.
because, the military paid for school after that anyway. So it was fine. It was fine. That's what I keep
Hmm.
telling myself to this day is it's fine.
Oh, that's
But yeah,
crazy.
that's
Okay,
that's my
so,
why I joined story.
oh, and then what did you do in the Army? What was your time in
Oh
there
yeah, that's a
like?
solid question. I also got very lucky because it was the end. I guess it was technically the beginning of a fiscal year. Pretty much whatever I wanted to do with these awesome ASVAB scores was open to me. And I will say healthcare specialist, not at all what I thought it was. I joined to be a healthcare specialist to work in a hospital and do all these clinical things. What I really was a ground medic, and I did all of these like in the field dirty crappy things, but it was fun. It was fun. I'm glad I did that actually. But that was also a big surprise when I actually got to my real unit and I started doing my real job. I was like, this is not a hospital. I was actually attached to an MP unit in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, or no,
Oh,
Fort
nice.
Riley, Kansas. And I was also like, what the hell? I'm back in Kansas. This is not why I joined. But I was attached to an MP unit and we just did a lot of field stuff. Um, but it was good. I don't know if you will ask me, but in your thing, you said like, what was one of your favorite memories? That will all tie
Hmm.
into that memory. We'll get to that if you do ask me. When I was
Okay.
medic, I spent most of my time as like a ground unit medic, but the most recent and more longevity thing that I had done as a medic, I turned more operations and mobilization because as you advance, I was enlisted, obviously. As you advance as an enlisted medic, I think it naturally does turn more operations and more um, like less clinical, less hospital setting. Not that I ever really got to do that, anyways. But I did a lot of screening. Like I had a team. I did a lot of the screenings before deployment to make sure that the soldiers were mentally, medically stable to go on a deployment. And if they weren't, what did
Hmm.
they need to do to become healthy? Or if it was something where they couldn't become healthy, like what did you need to do to stay in the military in general? And if it wasn't, then we needed to start, chaptering people out or retiring them. Part of my job really sucked because you really disappointed a lot of people, but other parts were really good because you got to have a direct role into helping people better themselves. But that was more that was more like the last 5, 6 years of my career of the total 12 years. So it was half. It was a good portion, but the
Hmm.
first half and the second half were totally different from one another.
Yeah. Where did all, so you did go on a deployment then?
No, that's what's crazy. Because in the beginning of my career, I was always attached to military police units. All of their, um, all of their like missions that they would go never had a medical slot with them. So I would always volunteer, but it was very competitive because in 2006 to 2012 or so, everyone really had that like I want to fight for my country. I want to go do these things. If you're am I going to be in the
Hmm.
army? I'm going to be in the army. So it was very
Yeah.
very competitive. It was me competing against all these other medics that wanted that one slot. And then I found it very ironic that in the latter part of my career, I was the one kind of slotting the different people in the different mobilization positions. I thought how odd that it would turn like this. But there
Hmm.
was one opportunity. I was an E6 at the time. There was an opportunity where a unit was looking for an E6 to go on this like really it was a pretty cool mission, I think. One where it was kind of dangerous. Of course you think that's cool because we're so stupid. But
Yeah.
I didn't have a family back then. None of that stuff really like hit the way that it hits now. But I
Yeah.
thought I could just jump on this deployment and totally give up this position. But then the smart part of my brain was like, okay, you worked your ass off to get where you are right now. Why would you throw that away to go on like a 9 month deployment that really means nothing in the long term or bigger picture? So I didn't. But no, I did not get to go on any like out of the United States deployments. All of my mobilizations were always like within different areas of the continental US.
Hmm. Very cool. I had well, have a brother that joined in, I want to say between like '08, '09 time frame, and maybe 9, 10. Anyway, he joined and became a combat medic in the army, and he was so excited. He thought that because he was a combat medic, he would be deployed all the time, and he didn't deploy a single time in his like 5 years. And he was
Yeah.
pissed. He was so ready to just like, the army was a new start for him, and he was like, if I'm going to join the army, I'm going to do army stuff, and I want to
Right.
deploy and shoot people. And just like, he had this kind of naive mindset going in, and he just stayed in what's the army base in northern um New York?
West Point? Oh, Fort Drum?
Yeah, Fort Drum. And he did like a little, his only like time away from Fort Drum was at West Point, being a medic for the training for the
It's so funny as a medic
OCS,
because
right?
you join under this like understanding, this make believe understanding. Because my recruiter definitely never, I'm actually one of the few, he never lied to me. He knew, he knew the whole story of why I was there. I didn't originally want to join. And then all of a sudden I show up again like a day later and I'm like, let's do this. And he's like, what the hell? But he never lied to me. He really was very honest. But again, I don't think he truly wanted to be a recruiter. And he was like, I'm not going to make some kid throw their life away. But it's so
Yeah.
funny as a medic, like, because you join thinking, oh, I'm going to go work in this hospital and do this like real cool, like resume building job. And then you realize very quickly that's not at all. I'm a combat medic. It's not at all what I'm doing. But then you're like, okay, cool, combat medic. Let's go do combat. And you like completely change your mentality around your job description or your MOS. And then you don't get to see combat and you're like, well, what the shit? And it's so funny, like the very quick 180 that we go through. And I think it's a common
Yeah.
story for a lot of healthcare specialists because that's our official title. But it should definitely just be like combat medic because we do know. I mean, we always have to make sure we get all of our credentials. Most medical specialties, we have to get credentialing every year. That
Mm-hmm.
was always in a hospital setting. You had to do your clinical rotations and things like that. But I think as a medic, it's very interesting. And then when you go to all of your NCOES schools or your the schools that you need to go to advance to the next rank, you go there and it is all the medics together, and then you see the drastic difference of what all the medics actually means because you have the people who've never been to the field a day in their life, but
Yeah.
yet, and they've worked in a hospital the whole time, but yet they're trying to do the same task as you. And we're all together trying to learn, and like we're suturing and doing all these things at the school. And they're like really advancing in like the sutures and all of these like hospital setting tasks. And then the latter part of the training or the school, you have to go to the field, and they've never held an M16 or an M4 a day in their life. And they're like, you have to clear it to go into the chow halls or all of the different areas you have to clear your in the clearing barrel. And they're like, standing there looking like I have no idea how to clear this weapon in this
Yeah.
clearing barrel. So I think this is also probably going to tie into a question that you had on your guide. I think it's really cool as a medic because you learn very quickly that there's no job in the military that you can just do alone. It's all very much a community effort. I think especially as medical, when you get together with all these other medics and all of you have different expertise and backgrounds, but without one another, not one single person in this like class of 90 could have grown. So it was a
Yeah.
pretty cool experience, but also kind of like looking back on it, it was a cool experience. While you were in the middle of it, you're like, this is a clusterfuck. Like, what is happening and who made these decisions?
Yeah. Did you find that from my experience in the Navy, if there is one job in the Navy that was like relatively balanced between male and female, it was ours is called hospital corpsman. But it was the medical industry. Was it pretty balanced for you, or do you still feel like you were a
It
minority pretty
seemed
severely?
balanced when I went to those courses or those classes. There were a lot of females in the classes, but in every
Mm-hmm.
position I was ever in, I was always like, maybe two of us were females, but maybe out of like the 10 of us, it was always still a very small percentage.
Yeah.
And I would say, honestly, most of them, I was the only female, but I was in an MP unit most of the time. So that's kind of a skewed question, I guess, to ask me, but everybody's going to have their own
True.
experience, of course. I do think, like, if I were to go all the way back to all of our initial trainings, like, what do we call it, AIT, and any of those other like schools where all the medics are becoming better medics or becoming medics in general, I do remember there being a ton of females in San Antonio when we were learning to become medics. But then when I got to all of my units, like, I don't know where they all went, but they weren't with me.
Yeah. Maybe because of the MP unit, those are pretty
Yeah.
male dominant
Yeah.
too. So, um,
I
how
do
was
think
your
also, sorry, go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. No,
Well, I
yeah, I
think
was
also
about to
like
change
in
the
the
subject.
I think we're gonna probably do that a lot.
Yeah.
In the medical world or in the medical like field in the military, not it's not that we don't have a lot of people that stay in. Like we sustain our force pretty well, but we're all I noticed early on, we are that small group of the military that was also always in college while being in the military. Like we were doing things two
Hmm.
time. And a lot of my guys are because I was always the senior medic. I don't know how it happened to be that way. But a lot of my guys, they all end up becoming officers, and I should have become an officer, but I never did. I actually started to try really hard to become one, and then I got medically retired, so that happened. But I think it was hard to see like that ratio of male to female because it wasn't there was a huge turnover, but there really kind of was because they would
Hmm.
all become officers and then get assigned completely different roles in the military.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool that like a lot of your subordinates commissioned. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kudos to you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's more kudos because they were all way better students than I ever was.
Hmm.
I was a great student before joining the military, and then I turned into an absolutely terrible student. Yeah.
Did you use your tuition assistance while you were in?
I used that. I maxed out all of my GI Bill. Yeah, I did all the things,
Nice.
and I don't use any part of my degree at all. So I wouldn't say it
Yeah.
was a waste of time, but I don't use any part of that degree. I have a pre-med degree and I'm a graphic designer, so I don't think it makes me a better
I
designer,
see
to
how
be
they
honest with you.
correlate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get the degree while you were active duty, or you did some active duty and then finished it later?
Yeah, a little of column A and column B. I
Okay.
was definitely still in for the pre-med degree. I changed my passion, still medical field while I was active duty, and then I wanted to become integrative health because the part that I loved about when I was trying to help people become healthy was also the part that I hated about it. There was nothing more frustrating or more like I didn't go home at the end of every day and be like, "Yes, I got it all done today." That was a very rare feeling to come by if I ever even felt it, maybe two times in like the 6 years, because you would have this very young soldier and they just want to mask or hide all these things that are wrong with them because they want to go on this deployment. And you're kind of like, okay, great, but this deployment is only like 9, 12, 15 months. What are you going to do after that? After you've completely destroyed your body, destroyed your mentality, destroyed whatever else it is that was, holding them back. And sometimes like they were really hanging from a thread of even staying in the military without having to be forced out because of whatever medical thing it was, and they would still be prioritizing this deployment. And I get it. I've lived that life. I wanted to go on the deployment because when your whole family, your unit is deploying, you want to go
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
But it was just I didn't take it personally. I wouldn't say that because I screened hundreds and hundreds of soldiers. I think in the end, I think it was like 10,000. I could be making that number up. I don't know, but 10,000 pops off my head because I had done it for so long. So it's not like I grew attached to any of these people, but it just sucked when I wanted better for them than they wanted for themselves. And it was like hard for them to
Hmm.
get out of their like blinders and see that bigger picture that I was trying to explain to them. So it was hard in that route, in that way, but it was also hard in other ways too, because people would either lie to me to cover up an injury so they could go on a deployment, or they would be lying to me to make up something wrong with them to get out of a deployment. No matter what you tell, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever watched episodes of House. I know it's kind of an older show.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
say
No, I
every
grew up
patient
watching
is
it.
lying, and it's totally
Hmm.
true. Like everyone you encounter is just lying to you to try to get what they want, what they think they need. And it's just really hard. I don't like the to be able to go home at the end of every day and then think about this, random PFC that you think, where are they now? I don't know. It was very difficult. So I wanted to do more integrative health to focus on that whole health aspect. So I changed my
Yeah.
degree. I never actually finished it because I grew way too exhausted of it. I was like, I can't, especially like with Western medicine and pharmaceuticals and how all that stuff goes. I grew way too exhausted of it. And I just kind of, I wouldn't say I threw it away because I am a mom now and I use all of my medical background a lot as a mom of a toddler, but I don't
I can
use it like
imagine.
I used to use. I don't use it for my full-time job, that's for sure.
Right. Um, I think that's really nice to hear someone that was a medic in the military that actually cares.
I
Because,
think most of us do. I think sometimes as medics we get clouded because you also have to look out for yourself while you're looking out for everyone else. So
mhm,
sometimes it's easy, and looking at the military all together, like I don't know what you guys called your different sections in the Navy, but the S1 or G1 section in the Army, like the admin section, is notoriously given hell for just not caring. I don't, it sounds terrible. Like
yeah,
if you were to look for a meme about the Army, it would probably be about how the S1 section is never there. They don't care. But I think it's honestly you have to have a little bit of that to be a soldier. If you're not looking out for yourself and you're looking out for everyone else, like you're going to get screwed and you're not going to advance. And just so many
yeah,
reasons why you have to be a little bit selfish. And some people don't have that, and you see them not advance, and it sucks to see them not advance, but it's
Mhm.
not something you can teach them. Like, hey, you got to look out for yourself, whether that be like so you can advance and be selfish and focus on your career, or be like, hey, you are breaking your back because you're carrying an aid bag and somebody's weapon because they are falling out of this ruck march. It, like every part of that whole health thing is so important as a medic. And I think we all start really caring about everyone in the force. That's literally our job. But we get a little jaded because of how easily that can be manipulated into being taken advantage of.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I totally see that. I guess like something I'd always tell my, we call them junior sailors, like when they would get pissed off at medical, like not doing what they want, I would just try to tell them like, don't medical, my experiences with medical have been pretty horrible. Like they just really don't seem to care, and I just chalked it up to like, I would tell my junior sailors, remember, just as much as when you're doing a job you don't want to do, you're going to do what you have to do to get through the day without any like hiccups, without getting in trouble. Most of these people that you're seeing, especially the enlisted, like the doc, once you finally see the doc, they're typically a little better. But all of these like corpsmen that you're seeing, they're just trying to get through their shift so they can go home without getting in trouble. And they probably don't care as much about your health as you care about yours. And that's just like the sad reality. Um, so it is kind of refreshing to hear some people that do care. But what would, is there like something like words of wisdom that you would give to people who are in the military and the healthcare industry on how to find that balance between, you know, obviously taking care of your patients and finding a reason to care about all of them, but still doing what you need to do to take care of yourself and your career?
I don't, when you asked me that question, this immediately popped in my head because there was a period where it turned more into just like, do what you got to do to just go home. And Facebook is great because it gives you all these memes. And if you follow the right pages, it, it feeds your algorithm and all this crap. But I remember back, it had to have been like 2015. I was really kind of in the thick of it where I was like, I just don't freaking care. Like everybody's lying to me. And I saw this quote, and I'm going to totally butcher it, but I can probably at least reciprocate it enough so you understand the gist of it. But there's this
Yeah.
quote. I wish that every medical person, maybe not even medical, but just every person in general could see this and actually like digest it. This quote said something about like, it's not your job to determine who deserves what or who is worthy of what. It is your job to provide like this is so terrible. I wish I should have Googled it right as you were asking me, like Google it to figure out what this quote is. But it's like your job is only to provide the best care that you can provide. And it really was a game changer for me. And it sounds so stupid to see a meme on Facebook and have that be your game changer. But I think it just takes for where you're at in your season of life to see something that triggers something else in your brain and it creates like a trickle effect. But after reading that, I looked at every soldier that came in front of me differently. Like, okay,
Mhm.
you are probably lying to me, but it's not my job to determine like, do you deserve this deployment when other, especially like as medics, because I would see medics that would come in front of me too. And I'm like, a little jaded because they're going on this really kick ass deployment that I would have loved to have gone on at their age. But it's not my job. My job is not to determine who deserves what. My job is to give them the knowledge and the information that they need to be the best version of themselves. My job is to provide the best medical care that I can provide,
Yeah.
period. Like there are no like sub statements, there's no anything else. It shouldn't be influenced by your PA being a dickhead to you. So now you're going to be a dickhead to everyone else. It should not be influenced
Mhm.
by any of that. Like it is very hard because we're humans, but our job, period, is to provide the best care that we can provide. And if
Right.
you can go home at the end of the day and look in the mirror and say, I provided the best care I can provide, then you're doing your job. If you cannot
Mhm.
say that on an overwhelming amount of days, you probably need to reevaluate and see if you should be finding something that, feeds your passion a little better. Because if you're not providing the best care, is it really your passion? Probably not. So you're doing a disservice to yourself too. You're not just doing a disservice to all of your service members that you're serving with.
Right. I would always go into my job with like, what's the point of even showing up to work if I'm not gonna put my best effort in and try to be as good, not the best person, but my best that I can. And
Mhm.
I totally agree with what you said. I worked as I was a volunteer sexual assault victim advocate in the Navy, and they would tell us all the time it's not your job to believe them or figure out who's telling the truth or if your alleged victim is actually a victim or not. It's your job to tell them you believe them and provide the best care and resources to them, regardless of your opinions on the situation. And if you're not able
100%.
to separate the two, then you don't need to be a victim advocate. And that was the mindset I took in every case. Was I It doesn't matter to me if you're lying or not. I'm still going to give you the resources and do my job.
Yep. And it's not that you should treat every person like a victim, but you should treat every person at face value of what they're saying. Because if they're
Right.
saying it, they
Yeah.
probably believe it. So yeah, I actually
Yeah.
went through that same training for a deployment that got off ramped and we didn't actually get to go on. I got real salty about these deployment things. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
went through that
sounds
training.
like
You're
it.
totally right. You're totally right.
Hmm. Um okay, well let's talk about something happier than now.
You're like, this got dark. Okay, let's
Yeah, I don't like talking about well, it's extremely important to have people because sexual assault in the military is a huge issue, but I feel like there's not much to like dive in on that subject because it's
I do find it
I don't
interesting that
think.
it did make our way into our conversation somehow because I was thinking just in general about the concept of your podcast and how it's really
Mhm.
cool. And I knew at some point you'll probably have someone, some female veteran, because unfortunately, I'm not going to keep this dark, but unfortunately, the numbers and the statistics show that overwhelming amount of women in the military have faced sexual harassment and sexual assault at some point.
Yeah.
But I think it's not that you should avoid it because it's not something that should be avoided. It's not a topic that
Mhm.
shouldn't be talked about because that's just making the problem worse. But I
Oh, yeah,
think,
it absolutely deserves to be talked about. Yeah.
yeah, but I do think as women veterans, we are so much more than that topic.
Yeah.
We have so much more to provide the conversation than that topic.
Mhm.
And it is a dark topic, but it sucks because it needs to be talked about. But
Mhm.
I do think it'll be really cool to see your podcast cover all of us as women in general and not just
Mhm.
the shit that you see in all of the headlines that make people realize,
Right.
oh yeah, there's women in the military because it's never
Mhm.
things like what you get to talk about with all of these female veterans.
Yeah.
So I think what
And
you're doing is really cool, and I think you're going to get to bring to light a lot of the good stuff about women in the military
yeah.
rather than only
Mhm.
seeing the headlines about all the bad shit.
Yes, it's so easy to just create this like bash fest on how women are treated unfairly and and we can sit here and complain about the military and the ridiculous statistics of sexual assault that happens on women, but sexual assault happens to men too, way more than
Yep,
you would
yep,
think. And I
yep.
am not here to say woe is me. I'm here to like applaud all of the women that served and kicked butt and helped pave the way for the women that haven't enlisted yet or became joined at all. And it's more to celebrate the accomplishments and the women that didn't care that the odds were against them. And like it's sad that I consider myself lucky that I wasn't sexually assaulted in the military, but like I know most of the women I've worked with have experienced some type of it. So it definitely deserves to be talked about, but I don't think I'm ready to like dive into that yet. And I want to make sure that the guest that I have on that talks about it with me is ready to. And
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Plus, like I think they should have an avenue to talk about all these things, especially,
Mhm.
we are all sisters. And I didn't always feel that way in the military because I do think the military somehow creates this environment where they kind of pin women against each other,
Yes.
especially with that topic. And it's total bullshit. But it took me a really freaking long time. And unfortunately, it took me longer than I was in the military. Like, okay, that doesn't make sense. I got out in the military in 2018. This,
Mhm.
oddly enough, I got out the same day that I joined. I don't know how those cards all aligned like that. But so
Yeah.
this day, pretty much 5 years ago is when I got out. And it took me 3 years ago to finally realize, like, why the hell are women always trying to tear each other down? Why aren't we trying to build each other up? Because
Yeah.
just like that community effect, like, God, we could really benefit from all of us being on the same team. But in the military, in the world in general, we just somehow keep creating this freaking culture or this environment where it's easier to make all of us competitive against one another. And
Yeah.
it sucks to see that. It sucks even more to admit that I was part of that culture, like where it was very
Mhm.
competitive. But all we can do
Well,
is
it is
learn from it and then
almost,
try to be better.
yeah, I think I had never thought of it this way, but when you said that, I remember like when I was a junior sailor and trying to like promote and get all of these opportunities for growth, and I remember not really seeing the men as my competition. It was always the woman. And I don't know if that's because that's just what I was used to, like growing up, or if it's because I
Right.
felt like, let's say there's 4 spots for promotion, or I was an air traffic controller. So you have to fight for each control station that you get qualified on. And let's say
Hmm.
there's only 4 spots for this one position, only one of them is going to a girl. It was just like assumed that it would be, they never said it that way. I never felt like um it was unfair treatment. It was just almost like unspoken that like they would
Because it's
they
this culture that
evaluated,
somehow gets created. And you
yeah, they
kind of
would,
have to sit back and think, is it the men that's creating this culture or is it us women that's creating this culture? And
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm definitely not an expert in the field, but
Hmm.
I think if all the men and women were to just come together to try to eradicate the culture, it would be really great. Who knows when the
Yeah.
hell that will ever happen?
I
Yeah,
think
you're
it
totally
is like
right.
subconscious. Yeah, cuz even
Mhm.
like from a leadership standpoint, when you would you would talk about what women are the high performers and what men, and you don't really think of it like, sometimes we would put the men and women, like, for lack of a better term, against each other to determine who would get what opportunities, but you just find yourself subconsciously categorizing the men and then the women separately, and um it's definitely like what subconscious bias that I think needs to be thought about more from, people trying to make it, and like you said, working together, and then from a leadership standpoint too. And why do they have to be in 2 categories when they're doing the same job? Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And that's the whole, like, for the promotion, like you mentioned, it's very frustrating because you feel like you're competing against women. Although
Hmm.
technically for me, not really, because I was always usually the only female, so I was just competing in general. But I was
Yeah.
competing against people that I've never seen because it's all of the force that go into a promotion pool together, and then you make a
Hmm.
list, and whoever. I got promoted super fast. I started as an E1 and I retired as an E7. I made E7 at only 8 years. And you feel like you're competing against other women because they do get your DA photo in each one. And you feel like, I understand that appearance is a huge part of your career. And I will be the first one to say that when I see, even to this day, if I see a service member looking jacked up in their uniform, it just boils me.
Hmm.
But when I see a female in uniform looking jacked up, it makes me want to go over there and be like, you need, the command hand comes out and I'm like, you need to fix
I saw that
yourself.
hand pop
And you're
out.
like, absolutely not. Because I'm a firm
Hmm.
believer that unfortunately, because this culture that we're talking about, if you are in public or if a public person can see you in general, when they see a female in uniform, they see all of us. They see every
Yeah.
freaking female in uniform. And so I'm like, look,
Hmm.
you're representing me right now. And I would not be
Yeah.
looking like this. You need to fix your shit.
Right. It's
But I
not a
don't think
soldier,
that
it's
they
a
see the
female
same thing when they
soldier.
see a male in uniform.
Exactly. When they see a male, they see a soldier or a sailor, but then they see a female and it's a female soldier or female sailor or marine or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah, it definitely is. And to put it into a little bit of, from my experience, if, especially in my job, women weren't expected to be good because a
Yeah.
lot of them weren't. And that's our fault as women. Or so when you were a woman that could control aircraft well, you were the top, and you were looked at above the men because men were expected to do well. And when there was a woman that could do the job well, you were like a shiny diamond in the rough because all the other women weren't good or they were lazy. And,
Complacent.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
then
when,
I know you've experienced it. I don't even know if I should bring it up. So you promote ahead of peers, especially ahead of other women. You don't get that same respect that should come with being promoted ahead of peers. You get the, oh, well, what did you do to make that rank? And you just want to jackknife somebody in the throat, but
oh,
you
I would
can't.
shut that down immediately. They would,
Yeah,
if anyone would question it, I'd be like, look at, you want to go, I'd say, you want to go control right now? Let me show you that I'm better than you because I know I am. Like, I would just give people no excuse to ever question why I deserved what I got. And I was
absolutely.
never afraid. And unfortunately, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, but a popular saying in the Navy is that to be a successful woman, you are either a bitch or you're a slut. And
I
I
don't
was
think
the
I've heard
bitch.
those word for word, but it's definitely an understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but why are we bitches when an asshole man is just somebody trying to do what he needs to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
It's
if there's a woman that's demanding, it's typically a bitch. But if it's a man that's demanding, he's a strong leader.
yeah.
um,
hmm
there
We
are some,
actually we had this female general. I'm not going to say her name because she's probably still in, and it's pretty easy to look up generals. We
yeah,
had this female
especially
general.
females.
She was a 1 star at the time, and she served along. I was in a 2 star command. So we had him, and then we had a female general and a male general that served directly below him. The amount of shit that got talked on her versus the one who was right next to her doing the same exact stuff, like it's just, and I would correct people. I didn't think she was as bad as a lot of people say she was, but people would chalk that up, well, it's because you're a female. Like, no, it actually has nothing to do with that. You guys are just,
Yeah.
they take things so personally and they're just like, well, she's just being bitchy today, or it must be that time of the month today. And you're like, or she has a fucking job to do and she's not going to put up with your complacency and she's going to get the job done. If you can't do it, fucking leave so she can get someone else in that position. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would get so fired up when people would talk shit about her. And it wasn't even me, but I think it takes other. Unfortunately, I don't actually, I'm going to completely reject what I was about to say. It doesn't take other females to stick up for other females. What it takes is other people, men and women, to stick up for
Yeah.
more females and say, bullshit, they're there to do a job and she's doing a
Mm-hmm.
great job at it. That's why she's in the
Yeah.
position that she's in.
Right. And holding people accountable regardless of their gender or gender identity, too. Like, it doesn't,
hmm
yeah, I tried really hard my last year I was an E7, so I was making like more big decisions that would impact people. And I really tried. I was the only female, we call it khaki, which is like E7 and above or an officer, in my work center. And I really tried to like stick up for the women when I could, but also check my like bias on making sure I was treating them equal. But when you're working with six other higher ranking men, none of them are thinking about sticking up for the women. So I really tried to make sure that we all did a better job at looking at everyone regardless of their gender. Okay, enough on the vent session. That was therapeutic. um,
I'll just
you
send you a
talked
bill
about,
later.
yeah, we'll do like I don't know, weekly therapy sessions on the show. Um, you mentioned that you had like a favorite memory or
Oh,
little story you wanted to share.
yeah. I don't even
Okay,
remember what
let's
I
hear it.
mentioned earlier that made it pop right up into my head. We were in the field. And as medics, we were just taking care. People were falling out left and right. Like, I guess our mission in the field was just kind of challenging. I don't really know any other reason to explain why so many people were falling out, but we still had to accomplish our mission and then still take care of all these people that were falling out. It was just very exhausting. And there were 4 of us medics there, I think. And I could just tell, I was the senior medic. I could just tell that everyone, we still had like 2 weeks to go. So there was no really end in sight, or the end was not near. I could just tell that they were just drained. And I never wore makeup in the field because why the hell, is pointless. But some females did. And if that's what they need to do to feel empowered, whatever, man. It doesn't impact your mission. Cool. I
Yeah.
never wore makeup in the field, but I always had it in my bag so that when I came out of the field, I didn't look way like I should just be checked in. So I had it in my bag, and all of my guys, it was just me. I was the only female. All of my guys were just run down. It was like 10:30 at night. And I don't know what even made this idea pop into my head, but it's definitely one of my memorable ones of the whole time I was in the military. I took my mascara and like rubbed it on my finger, and we smeared it like Vietnam era kind of war paint, and we
Yeah.
put on, we took apart all of our like gear to make it look more Vietnam era. And we, cell phones way back then, they did not take great photos, but we took grainy photos just because the cell phones were terrible. We just took these Vietnam looking photos with mascara literally smeared on our face. It was all men and me, but I don't know why something so stupid completely changed the morale of my team, but it worked somehow. I don't even know why I thought it was a good idea at the time, but it did work. At 10:30 at night, we decided instead of going to sleep to rest, we would stay up for another like 45 minutes doing really dumb shit, like putting mascara on our face. But it did work, and we got through the next 2 weeks. Obviously, we would have gotten through it either way, but we got through the next 2 weeks with a better like energy, I guess. That is definitely one of my more fond memories of being in. The
Yeah.
other one is totally opposite of that. We were going TDY. I'm a huge Royals fan. Well, I shouldn't say I still am. I used to be a huge Royals fan before I became a mom because I could dedicate more time to watching baseball games. But I used to be this huge Royals fan, and they were actually had an interleague series at the Chicago Cubs. Their last game of that series, like in the summertime, got canceled, and it got moved to September. And we were flying through Chicago. All of my team, they knew I was a huge fan. They didn't really care about the Royals at all. We decided not to get on our connecting flight out of Chicago, and we all kind of bailed on our TDY. We all kind of bailed on our TDY. I shouldn't say that. We weren't AWOL. We just showed up a lot later than what we would have showed up. We were still reported on time. We did what we were supposed to do. We weren't total
Yeah.
shitbags, but we definitely missed our flight, got a rental car, crammed in there so we could go watch the Royals play the Cubs in
Oh my
Chicago. And it
God.
was really
That's
freaking cool.
awesome.
Yeah, that was my other
That's
fond
really cool.
memory.
Yeah, I have a lot of like goofy memories from like deployment and then just like training evolutions. So I was stationed on a ship in San Diego, California, but our trainer for like the air traffic control simulators for the ships were in Pensacola, Florida. And you have to go every so often to like keep your currency to control
Mhm.
because the ship isn't out to sea all 24/7. You know, there's months that we go just sitting at the dock. And anyway, we would always get this 15 passenger van as a rental, you know, like the big white ones that look like you're going
Yeah.
to kidnap someone.
Yeah.
And so we're driving in Pensacola, Florida, and we're all crammed into this van like sardines because the Navy's cheap and would only give us one van for 15 people and our luggage. And we see this like guy on a sport motorcycle next to us, and everyone's like, dude, race him. And I won't say the name of the guy that was driving the van because it was on the Navy's money. But we tell him to race this motorcycle. So we roll the windows down and like we all stare at the motorcyclist, and he revs the engine of this van. And he just laughs at us, and we try to race him, and he just like slows down to catch up to us, and he's flooring it, and we're going like 30. It
Were
was
you
so
guys in
funny.
uniform?
No,
Oh, okay.
uh I don't think so. And we did it a few times, so I'm sure one of the times we were in uniform, but we were
Can you
just
imagine
having
what
a
was
good
going through that
time.
guy's head? Like, why
It
are
was
all
like
these
these
random
idiots.
people in a van together? And why is this sad? But I would totally be here for that.
And it was like the worst engine rev you could ever imagine because it was a van, probably like a little 4-cylinder engine in this thing. And it was really funny. And just like, oh, that was when, oh, I don't remember the song. It was this trend where you would play a song and at a traffic light, you would get out of your car and dance.
Yes. Oh, what was that
Um,
song?
I don't
I
remember.
can almost hear it in my head, but I know what you're talking about.
Was it Kiki? Do you love me? Or
Yeah, I think so.
maybe
I think
not.
you're right.
Um. Anyway, we'd do it on base because we'd be in uniforms. We'd get at a red light on the base in Pensacola, and someone would jump out, and we'd like go through the road while they were like dancing, and we were in uniform for this. That was a good time.
I don't know how
But
you guys pulled that one off. Especially
the
on
Navy,
base.
they're pretty lax about it. And we would do it like we wouldn't hold up traffic, it would be, and the training was at night too, so there would be no one around. But yeah, most of our good memories are completely unrelated to work.
Yeah. But that's what it takes. It takes all these little small stupid memories that just really
Yeah.
build your fondness of being in the military. Because it's just
Hmm.
like, what are your favorite memories of growing up with your siblings? It's all this stupid little crap that, like, when you tell someone else, you're like, oh, I guess that really wasn't that funny. But if you were
Yeah.
there, it would have been the best. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that's all of the good memories of the military.
Hmm. Yeah, anytime that my family or random people that meet me and find out I was in the military ask me like, "Oh, what was deployment like?" And I just want to talk about like these goofy like pull up and chin up and or push up competitions we had at work, but like they're going to be like that sounds really dumb, and I'm like it was fun. Just you don't get it.
You had to be there.
Yeah. And I was like, I promise it's way funnier than the story I tell. And it just, yeah, people don't get it, but it's fine.
It's almost like you just want to preface, like, are you sure you really want to know what my favorite memory? And you're almost like, you almost feel like you should just create some other memory that would be funny, but you're like, you know what? No, I'm going to tell you this dumb crap that we used to do.
Yeah, I
'Cause you
have
just,
like a go to story that like is more deployment related about like hearing Iran like call us out for being in their airspace and telling us they're going to shoot a missile at us. But like, it's something they do to every ship when they come through, so we already knew, but like, people were like, "Oh, Iran," like, um, so that's typically the story I tell them rather than the weird, goofy stuff we did when airplanes were flying that we probably shouldn't have done.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um, okay, so going into what was your transition like out of leaving the army? I know you said you were medically retired. Do you want to touch on how that
Yeah.
happened for a minute?
I feel really fortunate because I helped a lot of people with their transitions out of the military. So I was really more prepared, or I knew what to expect for my own. It still
Yeah, that's
sucked to go
nice.
through it, but
Mm-hmm.
I felt in the beginning I was really, I had to go to behavioral health and talk about it a lot because I was like, well, this why? Like I had so much unfinished business that I wanted to do. But then at the same time, I was like, okay, well, I could sit here and moan about the chapters that won't be written, or I could start writing the next chapter. So I definitely
Yeah.
took that perspective. I feel very fortunate that I had the ability to take that perspective. But I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis early in 2018. It started progressing pretty aggressively, and we had tried a couple. I say we tried a couple treatments, but I don't even consider them treatments for MS anymore because they're very much 90s medicine. But we tried a couple and it just wasn't really working. So I had to go the more aggressive route. But there was a period where I couldn't really walk. I mean, I could walk around the house, but I was holding onto walls and I couldn't shower without like
Wow.
the geriatric chair. So I feel I just have a lot of gratitude for where I'm at today and how my story that I've written has gotten me where I'm at today. But it was a transition out was very quick. I felt weird being in a retirement ceremony with people who had served 30 years and I'm sitting there with like 12. But at the same time, it felt really cool to sit amongst these people who were also E7s retiring at 30 years and I only had 12. So
Yeah.
that part like made me proud. But one of the coolest parts I think about my retirement ceremony, actually, I had a few cool things. Out of pure luck, a female general is the one who commenced the ceremony, and she had worked AMED, which was the medical. So I thought, oh, this is badass that I get to have a female
Yeah, that's
general.
awesome.
My husband was active duty at the time. He still is. Everyone just kind of, because females in the military, everyone assumed it was his retirement ceremony, and it was not mine. So we took that like obligatory photo where all of the spouses are standing up behind the service member. The service member is sitting and they have their hand on the shoulder. You know what I mean? Like the spouses have the hand on the shoulder to show their
Yeah.
spousal support. But it's all these women in these like great dresses. And then my husband in his uniform. But it's probably one of my favorite photos because he just looks so out of place. And I absolutely love it because I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah. But yeah, my transition out it was very quick, as most medical retirements honestly are. But it was good. I don't feel like I have a lack of closure. I feel like I got all the closure that I needed just because it happened more quickly than it should have.
Hmm.
It kind of paved the path for all of the life that I'm living right now because we weren't forced, but we were pretty much forced. If we were going to have kids, we needed to do it right now. So I got out while I was pregnant, but I was lucky because I was only like 4 months pregnant and I could still fit into my uniform without having to buy a pregnancy uniform just for
Oh,
my
nice.
retirement ceremony.
Yeah,
But I was wildly uncomfortable.
I
But
bet.
I do wish this is going to be part of my advice to other females in the military. I do wish I had more photos of me in my uniform, not my dress uniform, but like the uniform I wore every day. I wish I had more photos of me because I have a daughter now. And it sucks that when she sees a soldier, she goes, "Oh, there's daddy." Or when she sees she has a dress up uniform, she thinks
Hmm.
that's daddy's uniform. And she doesn't even know that it was, I mean, she does know, we tell her, but when she pictures a soldier, she doesn't see me. And if I had more pictures to show her, it could become more of a reality for younger minds to see females in the military. So
Hmm.
I I don't know, if you're in and you're serving, get some more photos of yourself right now because when you become a mom, you're still never in your freaking photos.
Yeah.
It's just got to get the photos.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point and something I'm glad that I did because my mom always wanted pictures of me um in my uniform, and I would tell her like, "Oh, I have duty today," and had to stand watch like arm up with an M16 and M9 and all, the vest, the whole get up, and she'd be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, send me a picture." I'm like, "Mom, I'm working. I'm not going to send you a picture." And so one
What does
day
you
I
feel like
was
a
like, "You know
dork?
what?
Like, hey, I know we're just
Yeah,
in uniform, but could you take a picture of me? And they're like, "What? Yeah, nerd."
yeah,
you
like
know,
who
like
are you? You're lame. How are you fresh out of boot camp or what? Like aren't
yeah,
we over this
look at
by
this
now?"
person, so proud.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But you
Yeah.
should be
So,
proud. But why it's so taboo to be proud to wear the uniform? It really is when you're
yeah.
in, you know?
It's not cool.
No,
But
yeah. Like
I
you who
remember
are way too hard.
yeah, I was walking back down the pier to the ship after standing. There's a gate at the pier to get access to the pier, and then you have to get access onto the ship as well because multiple ships are on one pier. Anyway, I was doing the pier watch, and I was the cover, so I had to have the rifle too. So my mom was like, "Oh, I need a picture, please. Like, you've been doing this for a couple years now." I was like, "Fine." So I found a friend that I knew wouldn't judge me when I was walking back, and we hid behind a dumpster so that I could take my picture. So it's a picture of me just standing, like,
Behind a dumpster.
holding, yeah, with a dumpster behind me, and I'm only 5'4", so the dumpster covered me completely, and it's just like the goofiest picture ever, and my mom loved it. But I'm glad that I have that picture now because I
Yeah.
didn't even think about it. Like if I am blessed to have a daughter, then I'll be able to show her that picture. So that's
Yeah, or
awesome.
son too, you know, like any
Yeah.
really anyone. I have group photos where we took like our class photo at the end or like at the end of a
Hmm.
long um field rotation or something. We have those photos, but it's not just me and
Hmm.
I'm barely like I'm only 5'3", so I'm like hidden by all these monsters of
Yeah.
dudes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Pictures are so important. They
Hmm.
really are, but
When did you get into your graphic design business? How did that come about?
actually you can blame the army for that. I don't really know how I was always this person. But, you know, every commander, they want their own take on the unit logo or the unit mascot. And then every unit you're in has the unit t shirt. Somehow I was always the t shirt guy. I was always the one that had to design these t shirts. And I had zero design experience, but I would limp along a design out of Microsoft Word and Microsoft Paint. And
Nice.
then, yeah. Actually, people don't give those programs near enough credit because you can do some pretty cool shit inside of those. But
Oh yeah.
anyways, yeah, so, you know, I was in like 7 different units, so that was 7 different times, and if there was a softball team in that unit, I was also the one creating the softball shirt. So I've
Yeah.
created a handful of designs already, and I always, you know, after the first time, I'm like kinda grumpy, like, "Why the hell did they pick me to do this?" I always felt like the medic always because we were like the headquarters the lower denomination. Like it was, we always got tasked with all these BS things that you're like, why me? Why is the medic always getting
Yeah.
tasked with all this crap? Like we were always the ones that had to do urinalysis, and we had to go to sexual assault coordinating, and like we always had to just do all these random things. So, but to add the t-shirt design to it, and then it turns out I really liked it. And then it turns out I got good at it through Microsoft Word and my Microsoft Paint. And then I designed someone in 2013. I designed someone's business logo. I thought very randomly, but they had an idea, and I was like, I could probably make that. And then my family, like they own small businesses. I designed my family's business logo. And then it turned out like after I was just so exhausted of being in the medical field in general, I was like, well, what else do I want to do? And I was like, well, let's just only do, because I was getting ready to get out of the military. I'm like, let me only do right now what I think is fun, because it was just kind of, it wasn't a dark period, but it was a heavy period in my life where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm out of the military way sooner than what I wanted to be. So I just kind of did what was fun. And then I developed like a passion for it because I did not go to graphic design school. I had a pre-med degree. So I couldn't charge the same prices that designers that went to school. That's how I felt at the time. I couldn't charge the same prices as them. So then I was way more attainable for small business owners who couldn't, they're just starting out and they are faced with mountains of tasks. They can't afford to pay a design firm for a really cool logo, but I could provide them exactly what they were looking for. I think it still looked just as great. But then, yeah, the passion started because I'm helping people in a different way. I was still like in that service industry. I was
Hmm.
helping people in a different way. And then it got kind of addictive isn't the right word, but I'm just going to use that word because I don't know any other one to use. When small businesses decide to become a small business, like I'm sure that you are probably facing, you have all these things to do, and it makes you kind of take a step back and go, God, do I really want to do this? Because none of these
Yeah.
things, like the taxes and the business licenses and all these things that you have to do, suck. But then when you have someone like me that's helping you design a logo for a very affordable price at the time, I think I'm still affordable, don't get me wrong. But when you have someone like me coming in and I'm like a little beacon of light, it's nice being a beacon of light. It feels good for
Hmm.
you, and you give them that reminder of why they're doing what they're doing. You feel like you just get this feeling that I don't think I got very often towards the end of my career. You get this feeling of I have accomplished something today,
Yeah.
and that was the feeling that I kind of got addicted to. And then all of like how fun, because now I use the big kid programs. Like I use design software and I edit things the way that people that went to design school do it. We're all the same. And I have
Yeah.
learned very quickly because I've made massive amounts of logos. Not once has anyone ever asked me like, hey, by the way, can I see your design degree? I just want to make sure you're suitable for creating my
Yeah. No
logo.
one cares. Yeah.
Yeah, no one cares. So
Hmm.
that made me realize like I still provide quality work. I should meet and match my peers. And it was kind of a
Yeah.
weird, I was up here against my peers in the military, and then I felt like I went like this, and now I'm like this again. And it's just, the different seasons of our life and how fluid we have to be with our demeanor, I guess. But that's
Hmm.
how you can definitely blame the Army for making me the t-shirt guy every time, why I do designing now. And it is really
Hmm.
fun. I also love how lighthearted designs is because there's genuinely no such thing as a design emergency. Like no one's going to die if I don't give them this. And it's not that I become complacent, but I do get really busy. And sometimes I let things, I let you slip actually for a little bit. And I felt so
Aw.
terrible. But I always make sure I come back and, provide that quality that I promised at the beginning of our
Hmm.
conversation. And I try to make things right in my head because I think I do still take it very seriously, and I hate wasting people's time. I hate it when people
Hmm.
waste my time, but I absolutely hate when I
Yeah.
waste other people's time. So all of those qualities that I had to use in the military to advance to where I advanced to, they fuel my business now. And I don't know if that's something I was born with and I would have had it if I wasn't in the military anyways, but I can
Hmm.
definitely attribute different times of my career in the military to why I'm so successful with my business as I am now.
Yeah.
But there are times
What?
where I suck, like with you, where I kind of let your design slip for a little bit. I think I messaged you or you messaged me like right as I was unpacking boxes and my brain was everywhere. I had super ADD during that time. So I am
Oh,
very
you're
sorry,
totally
but I do
fine.
appreciate your gracefulness with
Oh, it
letting me
came
still
out
help
on
you in the
time
part of your
and
journey.
yeah. It is perfect. Like literally everything I had imagined, and I tried to do like AI to create my logo or to
Girl, I
create the
try to use
person.
AI to make my job easier, and I'm like, how do these
Oh my
people
god.
do this? Like, I suck so bad at using AI.
It
I wish I was better.
and yeah, I didn't want to pay for it, so I was going to all of these free generative AI things, and I was like, I think I know how to prompt it well enough to give it what I want. No, and it would have like 8 fingers and like three
Yes, they
feet,
always
and
do.
yeah, and some of them were really good, except they had 3 feet, and I was like, I can say, all right, only 2 feet, and then it's like a picture of 2 feet. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah,
quit.
you think, okay, I'll just change my prompt to be more specific. I would like a female with 2 hands, 2 feet, connected to 2 arms and 2 legs. And you're like, you're trying to make it perfect. But man, I have a lot of respect for people who master AI because I
Yeah.
cannot figure it out. And I wish I could because it would make my life so much easier. But
Hmm.
then again, if I used AI, I probably wouldn't have as much fun designing things as I do now.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a double
Hmm.
edged sword.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
helpful
actually,
for like,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
but I wanted to give you kudos because as I was scrolling through your guide, I think it's so well put together. It looks
Oh,
aesthetically
thanks.
very pleasing. I'm like, this looks fantastic. And it's cool too to see part of my work at the top of it. But I'm like,
Yeah.
this girl's got it. Like, it looks good. You present
Oh,
yourself
thanks.
very well. I think you're doing great.
Thank you. What would you, if for any business owners listening, how important is like having branding done and a good logo and like just an overall brand?
Well, I actually just had this conversation with some of my neighbors last night. This is going to sound totally off the wall of what you're asking me, but I promise I'll hone it back in.
Okay.
This nail, so I live in a really small town right on the side of a mountain next to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is also a small town, but this, I think the population here is 2,000. And this nail salon had just opened up and it doesn't look run down, but it doesn't look like a typical place that you would have a nail salon. And the logo it's just not there. It's not really a logo at all. And my neighbors were just talking about like, oh my God, like, hey, do you want to go get murdered on Friday and go to this business? That's why
Oh my
branding is
God.
important. If you don't brand yourself well, you're not approachable. I have been to that nail salon and I know why the nail salon looks the way that it does because I took the time to have a conversation with him. Also, I saw it as a business opportunity. Let's be real. I saw it as a business opportunity to be like, hey, you desperately need my help. Like, let me help you. And I
Yeah.
needed a pedicure that day. So it was a win-win.
Yeah.
He does need help with his logo, but I got his full story of why it looks the way that it looks and why he's in the location that he's in, but he wouldn't get the opportunity to tell that story to anyone else because they are judging him off of his logo. And I don't want to say like the logo is the most important part of your business because it sounds very salesman-y, you know. But think
Mhm.
about when you go to Target and you're looking at two different brands of something, which one do you usually go with? The one that has this like beautiful packaging or the one that's like, it's just there. You always
Right.
go with the beautiful packaging. And it's the
Hmm.
same thing. Like, people are going to use the business. It's like a weird fine line. You don't want to use the business that has too great of branding because then they look not affordable. But you
Right.
don't want to go with the business that has no branding and you look like you get murdered if you go into the business. So I
Right.
do think there's a fine line. I don't think you should ever make something look less good. I don't know. I guess less good so that you look more affordable and attainable. I think you should
Hmm.
always go for the professional route. But if you spend massive amounts of money on like getting your entire website looking fantastic and you have an app and you have like all these other things, you're probably paying for that. And if you're paying for that, you need someone else to be paying you for your services.
Right.
So when customers see these massive amounts of branding, they think you're going to overcharge me so that I can pay for your branding, basically.
Hmm. I
And
think that
they're not
yeah,
wrong.
there's 100% a limit between like your branding evoking like what you want your business to portray and what you want people to feel when they think about your business, and it goes beyond your logo too, like especially
Yes.
for service based businesses, like you are your branding too, and like your
Yes.
personality, the way you type your Instagram captions, the way your wording, your copy on your website and everything, like all of that is your branding. It's not just a logo too. And like I try to, everything that I post that has words other than Instagram stories, because that's way too much work. But like I have like specific fonts that I use so that that when you see those colors, you think of my brand. And same with like, because I'm a photographer, my specific style. When someone sees my photo, they know that that was mine. Like
Yes,
people, I'll be hanging
100%.
out with my friends and they'll be like, "Hey, I just saw your photo," and like it wasn't even, and it was someone photo someone else shared.
Sorry, I had to shut the door real fast. I heard
All good.
my husband and my toddler are getting ready to walk in, so the dogs will go crazy, and it's like a trickle effect. Let's avoid that.
All good. Yeah, I shut the door so my dog doesn't bark at squirrels because there's a big window like right over there.
Perfect.
um,
You could probably still hear my dogs. They're very loud. They like to make their presence known.
oh,
No,
it's
oh,
okay.
shut the door, please. Shut the door, please. Sorry.
All good. Um, okay, yeah. I guess wrapping this up. We're already over an hour. That's crazy.
Yeah, probably because we went through that massive vent session for a while. Sorry for all of our
Yeah.
listeners that you had to listen to us vent. Maybe you have the same vent
Promise.
that you needed to do.
Yeah, we are positive people. We are proud of our service. We just
As
have
long
some
as whatever
complaints
you're saying
sometimes.
it, you say it with a smile on your face that doesn't make you look like a maniac. Like you radiate positivity, right? I think that's the golden
Yeah,
rule.
exactly. Okay, so last two questions. If you listen to an episode, you know, I ask them, what advice would you give to a woman that's going to join the military or a woman that is starting a business?
Okay, so I'm old and I feel like I always want to give people advice. No, I totally don't. If you're going to join the military as a woman, I think you need to be okay with being the bitch. We talked a little bit about earlier, but you've got to just be what other people would call a bitch because otherwise you're not going to advance. I know it sounds real shitty, but you need to put yourself first and advance and take care of yourself so that you become what you want to do in the military.
Mm-hmm.
But also with that, be always like respectful. Be what you would want other people to see you. Because if you don't feel like you're radiating that vibe or persona that you want to, you're probably not, and that's how other people are seeing you anyway. So that's my advice for
Yeah.
anyone joining. For other people thinking about opening a business, I think I probably did this when I first opened mine. Just like in the military, everything's a community effort, and you're gonna feel like, well, I can't make me wanting to open a business the community's problem. But when more people are vested in helping your business start off, thrive, not shut down whatever season of your business that you're in, when more people
Mm-hmm.
are vested in helping you, they become more vested in becoming like your customer or referring other people who could be customers to you as well. So
Yeah.
make your business a community effort. And it's going to seem like you're looking for handouts sometime, and you're not. You're just making it a community effort and you're getting brand awareness out there more or less. Because if you kind of stay in your own, like I work from home, if I were to stay in my back office all the time and not reach out to the community, I wouldn't have a clientele. So you have to kind of go outside of that comfort zone and realize that everything that you do is for the community. Otherwise, if it's not, your business, like all businesses need a clientele or a customer base, and that customer base is the community. So it's all kind of one big circle.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. And to add on to your statement, like about women joining the military, like it is pretty blunt and harsh the way that we've put it. And we don't mean that you have to be a bitch to everyone you work with, but it's kind of just to get the point across quicker by saying it that way. And like you you have to be firm in your beliefs and whatever you're enforcing or whatever you're doing, and if you know you're right, then don't back down. And um you don't have to be rude. You can be like, I guess, dominant and as a woman in the military and be respectful to people too. And people might portray you in a negative way, but eventually, because you are right and you know your stuff, they're gonna respect you and it will come with time.
Definitely. I don't know why when you were saying that this popped up in my head, but there's kind of a rule of thumb that I was taught probably as an E4. You can be a bitch in the military, but if you're always complaining down you just look whiny and you're now a whiny bitch, which sucks. The rule of thumb that was taught to me is if you need or you have something that needs complained about, you always complain up. You don't complain down. So
Hmm.
if you're an E4 and only like an E3 and E2 are underneath you, you don't complain to them about like you just got the shaft. You go complain to your E5. And then if you're an E5 or an E6 or an E7, you don't ever complain to the people under you. You complain up, which you
Hmm.
think is counterintuitive because you don't want them to think, oh, she is complaining again. Like, don't give her the next, task. And it's not like that. It actually gives them direct feedback of one, how to be a better leader, or two, how to better accomplish whatever mission that you need to accomplish. So
Yeah.
be a bitch, but always complain up. And I know it sounds
Hmm.
crazy, but
Some of
that
my
would be
best, yeah, the best sailors that worked for me are the ones that weren't afraid to vent to me and tell me when they thought I was making a bad decision. And they did it respectfully, and they would want to understand my decision making or my thought process in the decisions that I made. And I would never not explain to them when I could tell that it was coming from like a questioning attitude and not questioning authority, because there is a difference.
right.
But
Yep.
I could talk about that
100%.
forever. But cool. Thank you so
That'll be
much.
on next week's session of our vent number 2.
Yeah. um, where can people follow you, find your business, all of those things?
Um, I do have a website, but like everybody else's websites, like it's not like your source of the latest and greatest. But my website is starkeycollaborative.com. But I have Instagram and Facebook, of course. Don't judge me because I don't keep them updated near as much as I should. I'm just in this very busy season of life. I am still
Yep.
present. I am still working. And it's funny because I tell all of my clients how important it is for them to keep their social medias updated. So do as I say, not as I do. But I would say probably my Facebook and Instagram are the easiest or quickest way to see what I'm up to. And that's just the handle is Starkey, Starkey, collaborative. But that would be the fastest or easiest way to see if if my vibe fits your vibe, if you're interested in designs, or if you're just interested in what I've created with a pre-med degree, that would be where you could stalk me.
Yeah. Highly recommend her, by the way. So make sure you hit her up
Thanks,
maybe
Carl.
next year.
Yeah. Yeah, give me like a good solid 8 months in advance now. I usually have pretty good turnarounds
Yeah.
if I'm not sucking at life that day.
I agree. All
Thanks,
right. Well,
Carl.
thank you, Genelle, for coming on the show. And I'm sure we'll have you on again for another vent session.
Definitely. I'm excited to see where you go with this. I think we're really onto something good here.
Oh, thank you so much.